All right, here it is, Eric Ulis's complete DB Cooper theory in 9 minutes. Okay, let's get right into it here. So first of all, I believe that DB Cooper intended to jump shortly after the jet took off from Seattle. In other words, I believe his original plan was to jump in the suburbs or the exurbs of Seattle. That's why he didn't give a flight path. That's why he didn't give a damn, how the jet flew to Reno or whatever. He knew that he was going to be jumping 5 or 6 minutes after the jet took off. However, there were a couple of problems that got in the way. One, he couldn't lower the air stairs. Very big problem if you want to leave from the jet and you need to go via the air stairs and you can't get the air stairs down. So that's a problem that took him a little bit of time to solve. The other thing was the money itself. He had requested that the $200,000 in cash show up in a knapsack. However, it didn't arrive in a knapsack. It arrived in a white canvas open top bank bag or vault bag. Kind of flimsy, not heavy duty, didn't have a handle or zip or anything of that nature on top. So he obviously had to improvise with respect to how that money was going to be attached to his person before he jumped. And I think part of that, his improvising that involved taking some of the cash actually out of the vault bag and putting it into one of the reserve parachutes that he also jumped with. The reason for this is because the cash weighed about 22 pounds and the bank bag is sort of a light, flimsy kind of single stitch canvas bag. It's not heavy duty at all. So when you put 22 pounds of cash in there, you can look at it. I've looked at it. It looks like it's ready to just bust at the seams, ready to bust wide open. And I'm certain that DB Cooper saw that and thought exactly what I would be thinking, which is, hey, as soon as I jump out of the jet at 200 miles an hour, this thing's going to explode in midair. So I think he realized he had to lighten the load. So I do believe he took some of the cash out of the vault bag, put it in one of these reserve parachutes that he jumped with. And so therefore you've got, sort of these two separate bundles of cash that he had to attach to his person, in addition to the attaché case that ostensibly carried the bomb. He had to attach that to his person as well because it's never been found. He didn't leave it on board the jet. So my point is, it took him a little bit of time to get ready. By the time he was ready to jump, Seattle was long gone. He was flying over the middle of utter blackness. He can't jump in utter blackness, obviously, because he knows he has to work his way back to civilization eventually. He's going to have to walk back, like it or not, back to civilization. So he waits for the next best opportunity, which are the emerging lights, the emerging glow of the metropolitan Portland, Oregon area. He jumps ultimately, I believe, in the Vancouver, Washington area, and I believe was very near where a portion of the ransom was found in 1980. Now, how did the ransom end up on the beach? Obviously, Cooper's carrying this big bag of cash. He can't walk into town carrying 22 pounds of cash in a big white, canvas bank bag. I think he realized he had to temporarily stash the cash, and I think that's exactly what he did. He walked to the beach. It's sandy, easy to carve out a hole with a stick, your hands, or a rock, or whatever the case may happen to be. And I think he threw the bag of cash in the hole, and that overflow, those excess packets of cash that he put into the reserve parachute, I believe he took those out of the reserve parachute and threw those loose packets in the hole as well, covered it all up, and worked his way back into Vancouver, Washington, probably caught a Greyhound bus and went back to Seattle, because I do believe he ultimately started his day in Seattle, which is where he intended on ending his day. I think when all was said and done, he was a little bit concerned about laying low, making sure that the authorities weren't, sniffing around his area. He wasn't exactly sure what was going on outside of what was in the media there. So I think he opted to leave the cash buried in the sand at Tina Bar for several months when all was said and done. I believe he ultimately lived in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. I think this guy probably worked at Remcrew Titanium, which later became Crucible Steel, because there are a number of particles and rare earth elements and specialty metal particles and things of that nature that were on his tie, including 3 which are very specific to Remcrew Titanium. So I think he came from that area. Probably had a pink slip in hand. It was a tough time economically. People were losing their jobs and all that kind of thing. So, I think he just, for whatever reason, decided that was his ticket out. I'm going to extort 200 grand from the airliner, and all is well that ends well as far as that goes. So I do think that shortly after the skyjacking, he actually probably heads back to Pittsburgh. that area there and kind of hangs low for a period of time, just to observe, just to see what's going on. But here's the problem. June of 1972, about 7 months after the skyjacking, there is historic flooding on the Columbia River, which is kind of problematic if your money is buried on the Columbia River. So I think he realized that he needed to go back and retrieve the cash. This point would have been June of 72. And I think he realized that he needed to do this because if he didn't do it, one of two things is going to happen. Either A, the cash is going to get swept out to the ocean, which doesn't do him any good, or perhaps it becomes uncovered and somebody's walking along the beach, a week or two later and sees a half-buried bag of cash with $200,000 in it. So I think that precipitates his desire to go back, or his need rather, to go back and collect the cash. So he goes back, presumably under cover of darkness during this flooding period. Pulls the bag of cash out of the ground, scoops around there to retrieve those loose packets of 20s, but I think unbeknownst to him leaves 3 of these packets of 20s behind, and those 3 packets are later what is found by a little boy named Brian Ingram in February of 1980. And I think D.B. Cooper rolls. I think he takes off with the cash, what would have been about $194,000 in rolls, presumably heads back east to Pittsburgh. Now, obviously, something happened because it does not appear that the money was ever spent. And that's a really big question mark in this case. Why would what happened to the money? Where is it? What's the deal? I suspect that Cooper, again, working for Remcrew, Crucible Steel, working in that industry there, probably had an opportunity to actually get his job back, because that's what was going on back then. 71, there were a lot of people that lost their jobs in that area related to the specialty metals, in fact, the aerospace sector as a whole. But as 72 rolled around, the middle of 72 rolled around, people started getting their jobs back in that industry around the Pittsburgh area. So I think that perhaps he got his job back and he just kind of thought, let me just go back to work and do my thing. Let me kind of continue to lay low, not get hasty as far as spending this cash or opening up myself or making myself, vulnerable to capture that kind of thing. Because at the end of the day, I believe D.B. Cooper was a guy that was probably about 50 years old, probably reasonably well educated, but just a guy jammed up financially. And like I said, I think for whatever reason, he just decided, this is my ticket out as far as this goes here. So I do not believe D.B. Cooper was a career criminal. I think it was a one-off event. And I think that's about the extent of it. I think that he didn't brag about it to his buddies. I think he was very careful about how he managed sort of the narrative moving forward. And I think that is really the primary reason why D.B. Cooper was never caught. Now, the big question, where is D.B. Cooper today? Where is that money today? Well, if D.B. Cooper was around 50 years of age in 1971, in all likelihood, he is not alive today. Now, with respect to the money, if I had to hazard a guess, I suspect that the money is still in the Pittsburgh area. I think there's something close to $194,000 somewhere in the Pittsburgh area, either buried in somebody's backyard, sitting in someone's attic, secreted away in the walls of somebody's house, something of that nature. That is what I would expect as far as D.B. Cooper goes. So that is my theory. That is the totality, or Eric's complete summary theory of D.B. Cooper. The tall and short of it all, I think the guy got away. I do not believe he was a career criminal. And importantly, I do not believe that D.B. Cooper is any of the suspects that are known today. In other words, I think this guy flew completely under the radar and is yet to be determined. That's it, folks. All right, as usual, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to shoot me an email, eric@ericulis.com. And until next time, cheers.